Magandang umaga, magandang hapon, at magandang gabi kung saan ka ngayon. Ako si Jasper Dominic N and welcome to Kwentuhan About Life, show kung saan pag-uusapan natin ang mga bagay na gusto mong pag-usapan. Happy New Year, everyone, sa mga nakikinig. And isang maligayang New Year sa inyong mga Pilipino, kayong baka nasa Pilipinas. Kasi finally, mapapanood nyo na ang Spider-Man No Way Home sa sinehan. Ngayon, ayaw kong pag-usapan yung controversy about Metro Manila Film Festival at kung bakit hindi ito pinalabas sa Pilipinas last year, noong December, kasabay yung buong mundo. That's a different topic. And 100% sure marami sa inyo ang na-spoiled na about sa movie na ito, which is basically unfair. It's super unfair na may spoil kayo dahil spoiling something about a movie or a show na pinapanood mo or inabangan mo, it feels like it's stealing, If you spoiled someone, it means na you stole that person's one in a lifetime experience para ma-experience yung storya na ito, para ma-experience yung mga surprises from any form of media. Alright? I've been privileged na napanood ko ang Spider-Man No Way Home on December 16th, a day before the release date, dahil ako'y wala sa Pilipinas. And again, I'm privileged of that. And I'm thankful. Pero still, we live in a world na puno ng spoilers. And hindi natin maiiwasan na mai-spoil tayo. Dahil Spider-Man No Way Home is easily one of the biggest films of 2021. Okay? So, if you got spoiled, I feel sorry for you. Sasabihin nila na we should avoid social media, but you in a time like this, hindi mo maiwasang mag-social media. And at the same time, since hindi mo maiwasang mag-social media, hindi mo din maiwasang makakita ng spoilers. So this is how we're going to approach this review or discussion, okay? I'm going to review Spider-Man No Way Home, and I'm going to separate this in two sections. The first one is the non-spoiler section, and the second one is the spoiler section, okay? And since Filipinos are only just a few days away, maybe under 3 days or around 3 days, bago mapanood ang Spider-Man No Way Home for the first time sa sinehan, let's talk about how and why everybody loves this movie, okay? Ito lang masasabi ko. Spider-Man No Way Home, paglabas ko ng sinehan, I am very overwhelmed. Kung ano yung expectations ko, nalagpasan pa ito. And basically, what I can say is that watching the movie as a Spider-Man fan is super satisfying. It's one of those movies na kapag pinanood mo, lalabas kang one, super satisfied, super happy, feeling na it's one of the best things that you've ever seen in your entire life. Or two, lalabas kang satisfied or at least entertained. It's amazing how Sony and Marvel Studios was able to pull this thing off in the middle of a pandemic. So, a few weeks ago, nagsulat ako ng written review sa Letterboxd. Okay? You can follow me there. Just try looking gigahertz. Try looking for gigahertz. GIGAHERTZZZ. Or maybe try looking for my name, Jasper Dominic Abibas. And nagsulat akong written review ng Spider-Man No Way Home. And I gave it a 5 out of 5. That's how satisfied I am with this movie. And I've already seen it 3 times. There are plans of seeing it for the fourth time, but right now, I'm just happy na napanood ko ito sa sinehan with the audience. Because one of the best things about this movie is the audience's reaction, right? With you, especially that first night na pinanood ko to with, fellow Spider-Man fans. They were also wearing Spider-Man t-shirts. They were in costumes and experiencing this movie event with people who are also as excited as you are feels different. It feels special because you're sharing an experience with a set of strangers in one room. That's the magic of the movie experience. Suddenly, we're not strangers anymore, but brothers and sisters because we all love the Spider Man character, right? So, this movie is not perfect. I gave it a 5 out of 5 because it is a movie that I am very happy seeing. I was very satisfied, but it's not a perfect movie. What I do love about this movie is that Sony and Marvel was able to do a movie that pays respect to the source material and also pays respect to the previous movie iterations of to the previous live action iterations of Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi trilogy, and also the Mark Webb movies. Through that, ginawa nila yon by bringing back some of the villains from the movie. In Spider-Man 1, we got Green Goblin back. Spider-Man 2, we got Electro. Sorry, Dr. Octopus. Spider-Man 3, we got Sandman back. The Amazing Spider-Man 1, we got the Lizard. And then the Amazing Spider-Man 2, we got Electro. All of those villains were at least under the spotlight. I was very happy that they were able to balance all of them properly. While some villains didn't have as much screen time as other villains, I still appreciate that this movie is all about Tom Holland's Peter Parker. It's all about Spider Man, right? And, it's very amazing and it's very also satisfying to see all of these villains back in the big screen again. You know, 100% sure after natin manood ng mga Spider-Man movies in the past from Sam Raimi and Mark Webb, I thought we will never going to see them back again in a movie in the big screen. But hey, we live in a time where Avengers Endgame happened. So um seeing those villains in the big screen was such a delightful moment. Let's talk about Tom Holland as Spider-Man. He is very amazing in this movie. I think it is one of well, I've only seen Tom Holland's performances in the three Spider-Man films. I'm planning to see him in the Uncharted movie, but basically this is one of his. He did very good here in the movie. He was able to show us his multiple acting chops. Um, Naipakita niya yung the different sides of Peter Parker in some ways na hindi ko actually ine-expect from the Peter Parker character. It was an interesting. This movie is basically the most unique Spider-Man movie because one, we're dealing with multiverse stories. Two, we're dealing with a story that haven't been told from previous Spider-Man movies, and that is his identity being revealed to the public because of what happened in Far From Home. And also three, we were able to see how a superhero like Spider-Man react, or how can a teenage kid can handle yung instant celebrity status, especially when he's being treated as a murderer of Mysterio. So it's very interesting, and those are the things that we haven't seen in a Spider-Man movie before. And what's also interesting about this one is how yung chemistry, you know, of Peter and between Peter and MJ and also Ned. I really love the trio here. I think in all of the Marvel movies in the MCU, one of the best supporting characters are Zendaya as MJ and Ned, ano, Jacob Batalon as Ned. Ned leads dito. So those are very good. I think kung tatanggalin mo yung fan service, the Doctor Octopus and the villains, kung tatanggalin mo yung mga fan service na yun, this is still a very good movie because you really care for the characters. The trio and also Aunt May. Aunt May here she's also amazing here too. On the first few movies, I wasn't really been a fan of Aunt May, but here she's amazing. I forgot her name, but she's an amazing Aunt May. It's a very different Aunt May at the same time because she's very young, but you can see the tita from her part. So I really appreciate that. And it's funny because we di dapat natin makukuha tong movie na to. Do you guys remember when after pinalabas Spider-Man Far From Home, a few weeks after that, it was revealed and announced that the Spider-Man deal between Sony and Marvel already ended. So we were left with a cliffhanger. And yung cliffhanger na yon ay yung na-reveal na si Peter Parker at si Spider-Man ay iisa. And I remember during that time, I was very frustrated because the movie was going well. It's getting, Far From Home was getting positive reviews and it's doing very well sa box office. And this was around the time after Avengers Endgame was premiered. And it was this time, before the pandemic, it was this time where Marvel, the MCU has already peaked, and people are just talking about superheroes in general, and everybody was still pumped with what happened in Avenger Endgame's ending, and then knowing suddenly na biglang natapos na yung deal ng Sony and Marvel, it was kind of heartbreaking kasi this deal has been working very well for the both of them. Sony was making more money, and at the same time, Marvel Studios was able to use the Spider-Man character but to play around the MCU with the other Avengers, right? And then it happened. It happened. Sony and Marvel reached for a new deal, and then we were able to get Spider-Man No Way Home. And man, imagine a world without Spider-Man No Way Home. Imagine a world without a third movie from the Home trilogy, right? Hindi natin makukuha itong magnificent na movie na to. Hindi dapat natin makukuha the villains back. And it's just crazy. It's just crazy na nagawa nila to, and still at the middle of a pandemic, right? Easily, this is the best film in the Home trilogy. Um, and you know, big, big clap of the hands or tip of the hat to John Watts because he is one of the directors in the MCU who was able to direct three movies of his own, superhero. He directed Homecoming, Far From Home, and now No Way Home. Compared to other trilogies in other superheroes, laging iba-iba yung director. And yeah, he was able to put it off, you guys. It's amazing, and it's amazing how different this version of Spider-Man that we got compared to the other live actions. Granted, this Spider-Man exists in the MCU, that's why it's different, but it's different enough. It's still the same Peter Parker, the same Spider-Man, but it's different enough na they were able to do something about the ending that made everything sense, that made about this MCU version of Spider-Man made sense on why, on kung bakit ganito yung Spider-Man na to. We're going to talk about that more sa spoiler section, but yeah. And ano pa ba yung pwede kong sabihin? Basically, again, this movie is really good. Not the best Spider-Man movie out there. I still think Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 is the best Spider-Man movie, if not one of the best movies of all time. And yeah, again, this is a perfect score from me, a 5 out of 5 sa Letterboxd. And yeah, yun lang yung masasabi ko sa movie na to. Guys, you deserve to watch this movie in the big screen. Alright? I know it sucks na bawal magdala ng pagkain sa sinihan. I'm not sure if they're going to serve popcorns and stuff, but I think they will, because that's where movie theaters get most of their money, sa popcorn, sa drinks. But again, this is a movie that you need to watch in the big screen, in the biggest screen that you will ever see. And also bring your family and friends, because for sure, 100% sure na all of them will be satisfied. And yeah, now let's talk about spoilers, alright? Spoiler section na to. This is spoiler. Spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. Wow. Hindi ako makapaniwala sa mga nangyari sa movie na to. Binalik nila sina Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield as the other Spider-Man na napunta din sa MCU because of what happened during the spell. Look, everybody was expecting it, right? Everybody was expecting it. There were already some hints sa trailer, nasipa yung mukha ni Lizard. There were many hints na babalik sila. But it's different from hearing rumors compared to seeing it in person on screen, right? So, when pumunta ako sa sinihan, I was still in denial na makikita natin sila sa live action. I'm like, imposible naman. Fine, nakuha na rin mga kalaban, pero yung dalawang Spider-Man, imposible. Pero in my heart, there's a 1% chance na mangyayari yun. And it did happen, It did happen sa scene na yun doon sa Filipino scene. Finally, Filipino representation, more Filipino representation, please. Kaya pala na merong casting call. Last year, February 2021, yung Disney naghanap ng Lola. It turns out, merong Filipino scene sa movie na to, and I'm very happy na nagpakita yung dalawang Spider-Man sa mismong bahay or apartment ng isang Pilipino. Oh God, it's... Natutuwa na ako sa Filipino scene, tapos dumagdag pa tong dalawang Spider-Man na to. It's crazy to see them again, especially Tobey Maguire, because I grew up watching the Tobey Maguire films. I still, I can still remember na pumasok ko sa sinihan, umupo ako sa sahig dahil puno na yung sinihan, at there was also a puddle of drinks sa sahig kung saan ko inupuan. Umupo ako, nasa bandang kaliwa kami ng sinihan, kasama ko si Tito, kami ng dalawa sa sahig, and we were watching the first Spider-Man film where Tobey Maguire starred on. And then I also remember watching Spider-Man 2 with my family, Spider-Man 3 on my birthday with my family, puno-puno din ang sinihan, nagpumila pa kami. The Amazing Spider-Man 1 with my family, and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 with my girlfriend back in the day, with my ex. And seeing those live-action Spider-Man movies in the movie, and seeing those Spider-Man again in the big screen, there's something in your heart na hindi ko ma-explain. But basically, it's something that you will only feel once or maybe several times in your lifetime, that you are very thankful of what you're seeing right now. This is what life feels like, Living life is all about enjoyment. It's all about enjoying the gifts of life. And Spider-Man No Way Home and also having those two Spider-Man is one of those gifts in life. I wish na makalimutan ko yung experience ko sa Spider-Man No Way Home. Sana na nalimutan ko ng story and everything. And I wish to re-experience everything again on that night, on December 16th sa sinihan. Kasi what I experienced was magical. Even though kung yung movie na to ay wala si Tobey Maguire or wala si Andrew Garfield, this is still a 5 out of 5 movie for me, because this movie itself is a very good movie. It has a good story, and it also has good chemistry with characters. But still, wow, hindi mo makapaniwala na si Tobey Maguire and si Andrew Garfield ay bumalik. And one of the highlights of the film is Andrew Garfield himself, because he is like this middle child na siya yung sa tatlong magkakapatid sa tatang Spider-Man, siya yung pinakamakulit, You really feel na Andrew Garfield is very happy to be in that set with the other Spider-Man. He is very excited. Nakahawa yung excitement niya. And then we got Tobey Maguire back. He is like this older brother who is very wise. And he's someone na pwede mong lapitan, yakapin lang. And again, wow. While I did hope na sana we should have gotten more scenes with the three of them just being Peter Parker, or just more screen time sa dalawa na yon, kay Andrew or Tobey Maguire. I would really appreciate that, but that's fine. This is a 2 hour and 30 minutes movie, and it didn't feel like that. Everything went very fast. It's crazy. Napanood ko na tong movie na to 3 beses, and 2 hours and 30 minutes didn't feel enough. It feels really fast. The story went really fast. And yeah, I appreciate the fact that even though we didn't get those two, I've read an article na yung mga writers humingi din sila ng parang insights from Tobey Maguire on how they will handle the Tobey Maguire Peter Parker sa movie na to, and they also asked Andrew Garfield on how they want to handle Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker in this movie. Tobey Maguire said na he wanted to keep it subtle on like how Spider-Man 3 ended should be yung parang let's say ganito kasi Spider-Man 3 ended with us feeling na there's no it's a bittersweet conclusion. Hindi mo alam kung magshota ulit si MJ or si Peter Parker. And it's the same thing na naramdaman mo after watching No Way Home. This Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker is still the same Peter Parker from Spider-Man 3 na siya pa rin yung Peter Parker na hindi pa rin natin alam kung nagbalikan si MJ at or si Peter Parker. It's still very bittersweet. And basically yung naramdaman mo after seeing the ending of Spider-Man 3 ay na-retain after watching No Way Home, right? He didn't reveal anything new about his character. He didn't mention about MJ and him getting married or them having kids, probably May Parker. And I respect that. I respect that way of storytelling because, if you've seen Spider-Man 1, 2, 3 and you haven't seen No Way Home, it feels like you didn't miss any huge story bits about Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker. Because Spider-Man 3 still ended with a bittersweet ending at di mo pa rin talaga alam yung what happens after that. Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker was different because he mentioned about him being angry, he wasn't pulling his punches anymore, and we got a darker version of the Amazing Spider-Man, right? A darker version of him that we weren't able to see in live action on the big screen because the Amazing Spider-Man 3 got cancelled. And that's fine. That's fine. But I am curious to see that that part of his story, right? I'm curious to see how Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker handled the death of Gwen Stacy. And again, I'm very fascinated on how all of this turned out, right? I almost forgot to mention on the non-spoiler review na wow, Green Goblin, Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin was also one of the highlights of the movie. He stole the entire show. It's crazy. His portrayal of the Green Goblin was way better than the first Spider-Man film, I think. This Green Goblin is more menacing, he's more brutal, and dang, he can do wrestling moves here. Power bomb, something like that. I mean, he was already brutal in Spider-Man 1, but he is more brutal in this movie. And it was very fascinating to see how a different Spider-Man handled the same Green Goblin, right? And yeah, it also shows na it's very subtle, but we can see the power level that Tobey Maguire and Tom Holland have. Kasi Tom Holland was trying to um he's trying to defeat Green Goblin dun sa apartment scene, but he can't compared to Tobey Maguire, he was able to, you know, he almost knocked Green Goblin down, because I think it's their way of saying that um Tobey Maguire is a more powerful Spider-Man dahil mas malakas yata siya sumuntok or something like that. But I don't know. But yeah, ano po yung pwedeng sabihin? I love how they were able to respect Dr. Octopus here, Alfred Molina. Because Spider-Man 2 ended with him being a good guy, right? He will not die a monster. And I appreciate the fact that the movie ended with him still being a good guy. He also helped, he also helped uh, the Spider-Man to defeat the Sinister Five, right? Or rather, Sinister Four, because his um Alfred Dr. Octavius was helping. But it's also fascinating, right? You acting the Alfred Molina, because he was able to show the two sides of Dr. Octavius. The menacing one as Dr. Octopus, because yung tentacles na yun, it can change his personality, kind of like Green Goblin. He's more menacing, something like that. But then he was able to show his good side, and you can feel the heart of Dr. Otto Octavius, na he's just a scientist with a good heart. And those moments with him, with especially with him and Tobey Maguire, and while the Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi theme song was playing in the background, oh, it really touched my heart. You know, I also appreciate the fact that Jamie Foxx was amazing here. He's the cooler version. He's the cooler Dylan Max yata ang name niya. He I kind of love the fact that they acknowledge how he looked different in the universe, and yeah, I just love this version of Electro. I didn't hate his Electro in the Amazing Spider-Man 2, but I didn't like the Max Dillon character, because he was very comical. He was like the character from he was like the Riddler from Batman and Batman Forever, starring, I think it was Val Kilmer, na pinalabas noong 1990s yata. And I love his conversation with Andrew Garfield, and we also got a reference of, or maybe an Easter egg of him being curious whether there's a Black Spider-Man out there in the multiverse, and it makes sense. I heard, um, I was expecting for him to say that, because I was able to read this rumor na i-acknowledge nila na sasabihin ni Electro na he is going to be curious about the Black Spider-Man. And people were offended about it, but how can you be offended about something like that? Because Spider-Man wears a mask, his full body is covered, and you're just one of those people. If I'm Filipino, I will be one of those people who is curious na, uy, baka Pilipino to, or ganun ganun, right? And I respect that. It's a good way to uh mention. It's a good way to see more of Max Dillon's character, because he is a Spider-Man fan. Nakakalimutan natin yun. He is a Spider-Man fan. So it's very interesting to see that side of him again in this movie. And it's also a good way to maybe reference or do an Easter egg of, or maybe acknowledge of Miles Morales, Spider-Man. And I'm happy to know that the Reese Ifan as the lizard was also back, even though he wasn't there in his human form. He's in his lizard form. Also, the lizard form was also a little bit different. He looks a little bit different in the movie. He looks more CGI though, compared to the Amazing Spider-Man. And I didn't like the character changes that they did for him. But still, Rishi was back to voice him. I really love that. And also, I um I forgot who voiced Sandman, but he was also back. Granted, he was in his sand form the whole time, but that is also fine because maybe due to COVID, they weren't able to bring him back in person. That's why he just voiced the lines. So it was amazing to see the Sinister Five back in play, but we can be honest about it, and this is not the full and entire Sinister Six movie, right? I think it's one of the reasons why the Sinister Six was formed, because it's all about the six villains trying to form a group just to defeat Spider-Man, right? And um, that's the soul of the Sinister Six, and we can't do that. We can't do that. Maybe that's why we only have like the five, right? Not the six, not the complete six in this movie. But still, I appreciate everything about this movie, and also the fact that Aunt May said those lines. I think what she said, yung responsibility thing. I think what she said in this take of Aunt May in this version, yung sinabi niyang with great power must also come great responsibility. That is taken. Those lines were taken exactly from the comics, because the Raimi version was a little bit different. With great power comes great responsibility. But in the comics, I think it was, with great power must also come great responsibility. And yun ang sinabi ni Aunt May. And it was very saddening to see her die. She has this, I think they call it the Walking Dead syndrome, na hindi mo ramdam na mamamatay ka na. Everything was normal, and yeah, it was very saddening. It reminded me a lot of the, well, I don't want to spoil anything on other Spider-Man media, but it reminded me of that. And also sa gravestone ni Aunt May, nandun din yung line ni Aunt May sa Spider-Man PlayStation, right? Yun naman yung line ni Aunt May doon sa version na yun. When you save one, you save everyone. Parang ganun yata. When you help someone, you help everyone. Something like that. And guys, ito yung sasabihin ko, yung bala kong sabihin kanina sa non-spoiler. It turns out that this MCU trilogy of Spider-Man is an origin story of MCU's Peter Parker, because they were able to do a soft reboot of the character, right? And it's amazing because business wise, itong deal between Sony and Marvel, because the deal between Sony and Marvel is this: Sony owns the movie rights for Spider-Man. That's why Marvel Studios needs to borrow the Spider-Man character para mailagay siya sa movie nila, right? Sa MCU movies. So what Sony did is this. Sa pagkakaalam ko, and this is the deal during the Civil War days, all right? This is the deal. Marvel Studios can borrow the Spider-Man character, and they can put him in any MCU movie if Marvel Studios is going to do the creative part of the solo Spider-Man movies. That's why Marvel Studios handled the story, the creative side of the solo Spider-Man movies. Sila nag-handle na, sila yung nag-direct, sila yung sila yung nag-write ng story, something like that. Everything with Sony's approval, of course, right? Sony has the last word when it comes to the Spider-Man movies, solo movies, alright? Wala na yatang kinalaman yung Sony sa MCU movies. So in this way, itong ending na to, itong soft reboot na to, with Peter Parker being the Peter Parker from the comics, broke, lives in his apartment, but sadly, in this MCU version, nobody knows that he exists. And also, itong soft reboot na to, he was able to, this ending was able to fix some of the complaints that MCU Peter Parker has been getting. Tinatawag na siyang Iron Man Jr., how come this Peter Parker is spoiled, ganun daw. Lagi niyang ginagamit yung costume na ginawa ni Tony Stark. But now, he was able to make his own costume at the ending without the help of Stark, of course, and without the help of the Avengers. And it's fascinating to think that it's because of this story, because of this movie, the entire trilogy is his origin story, right? He was able to finally be Spider-Man from the comics. And people are sometimes bashing, hey, lagi na ng comics. The movie is the movie, the comics is the comics. That's fine, I know. But still, the reason why people love Spider-Man, why people love Peter Parker, is because that he is very relatable, right? He is a teenage student who has to work part-time to pay for his bills and stuff. And now this MCU Spider-Man is more lonely. He is now an orphan. He doesn't have friends. And yet, during the Christmas season, he's out there saving lives. That's very unselfish of him. It goes to show that anyone can wear the mask, right? Anyone can be a very unselfish person even though we're already in our lowest point. And that's the magic of the Peter Parker character. That's the magic of Spider-Man. And now we might be able to see that part of Tom Holland's Peter Parker in the next trilogy, right? If ever there's going to be a next trilogy. I've been hearing words na there's already a trilogy in the making. But it makes sense. It makes sense for a new set of Spider-Man movies because the Spider-Man name sells. It's making money. And it's only a bad business decision to put everything to stop making Spider-Man movies, right? That's why we're having Spider-Man movies ever since 2002, right? And also, that's why I also love the Peter Parker character, is that, that's why I love Spider-Man 2, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, because we were able to see Peter Parker in his lowest point, right? He keeps on being late, missing class. He was getting fired. He's heartbroken. His friend doesn't like him. Peter Parker is very unlucky, and yet he keeps on being Spider-Man, right? But on Spider-Man 2, he decided to give up being Spider-Man. But then he slowly realized that, hey, there are some people who looks up to the Spider-Man character. They see Spider-Man as the best versions of themselves. if there's someone who is unselfish enough to save people, I can be that someone, right? That's why I love the Spider-Man character compared to any other superheroes out there. And again, yun ang masasabi ko sa Spider-Man No Way Home. I am very happy for you guys to see this movie in the big screen. And after watching it, what do you guys think? Anong masasabi nyo sa experience nyo? Were you guys satisfied? Is the movie um way better than from the pirated stuff na napanood nyo sa internet or maybe sa bus? And yeah, that's my review. That's are my thoughts about Spider-Man No Way Home. I'm looking forward for a new Spider-Man movie. Hopefully we'll get a movie about him wearing the black suit again. There's so many potentials for so many stories for the future, right? And right now I'm excited for them to do something like a Craven the Hunter or Craven's Last Hunt story. They were actually supposed to do Craven's Last Hunt for No Way Home, but then they decided to just do the multiverse thing, right? And then again, thanks again for listening, you guys. This is, of course, if you guys are listening to this podcast version, there's also going to be a video version available on YouTube. And again, thank you for watching. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the Giga channel if you're watching from YouTube. And please follow me on Anchor for more of this discussions and stuff. And you guys, please take care, wash your hands. We are still in a pandemic. And please keep everyone in your family safe, everybody safe, and pray, you guys. Again, thank you, and God bless.